everyone. I'm super pleased to have you join us for another episode of Breakthrough, a show that's brought to you by Leaderonomics and Opeaklife. I'm Lisa Wong, a transformation coach and founder of Opeaklife. Breakthrough is a show that explores the mindsets of high achievers so you can learn their strategy to success. Our guest today has cultivated a remarkable mindset, one of innovation, leadership, and contribution. And I'm talking of contribution at the highest level. Westley Stringfellow is the founder and CEO of HowDo, where he's providing free, and I will say that again, free universal innovation training on howdo.com. Prior to HowDo, Wes was Target's first entrepreneur in residence, Target's VP of Innovation, and the founder of Techstars Retail Accelerator in partnership with Target. He was also Chief Product Officer for Big Commerce and Rosetta Stone, led product innovation at PayPal and Visa, and was a senior product manager at Amazon. As a result, Wes led teams that build and rebuild products and services used globally and daily by tens of millions of customers. Throughout his 20-year career, Wes honed his ability to quickly create a better strategic vision of a company's future, motivate large groups of people to pursue that vision, and then lead teams through the operational, financial, organizational, and technical processes that bring strategic visions to life. Wes is multiple award winner. In 2020, Wes was selected to join the EHF community of 500 action-oriented people influencing the cause of humanity. And in 2016, Wes was selected as a Power 50, who are the linchpins in their company, the heart of the operation, and the people who make things happen. Hello, Wes, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Now let's dive right in.
Okay.
Let's find out about HowDo. Now I know that HowDo is it's a platform where you offer free learning, free innovation at scale, and you have put enormous amount of money, your own money, into funding this. Yes. And people might be wondering, why is it free?
Yeah, it's a good question. So just this morning, I got back a report. I hired an investment bank in London, and I wanted to know what were all the big problems in the world. And that's what the report was called, Big Problems. And I wanted to know how we measure those. And I wanted to know what is the economic downside, economic upside, and then more importantly, what's the human downside and human upside? And when you look across a range of variables like water, food, air, equality, poverty, most of those things are not trending in the right direction. We're seeing more drought, more famine, more war, more isms and phobias, racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, all those things are rising right now. And the confluence of so many, what I would just call kind of common problems rising, to me suggests that something is fundamentally wrong. And whenever something is broken, that's kind of when I lean in. And, in my career, I got pulled into a lot of situations that needed to be improved. And I'm not saying they were broken, but they just were not where the folks who were running the company wanted them to be. And so I'd come in and I'd break the problem into small problems, find people who could solve those small problems, get the money, and then lead that process. And right now in the world, I don't see anyone doing that. Like, no offense to the governments, but they kind of seem to be dropping the ball worldwide on many things. And businesses generally just don't have the kind of real financial incentive to do anything about this. Businesses have an extraordinarily entrenched, ever since Milton Friedman, the purpose of a business is shareholder value. Well, I tend to think that we should evolve beyond that. I think that there is a higher purpose for business. And I think, business has created a lot of the world's problems. Let's be fair to business, but also business, I believe, contains the solutions to all the world's problems. If we're praying that the governments will figure it out in the next 10 to 15 years, like that, I don't think that's a good prayer. I think if we're hoping that businesses on their own are going to figure it out, I don't think that's good either. But what I do know is that almost everyone who's alive right now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that things are pretty crazy right now. And I think everyone wants it not to be crazy for their children. I think everyone wants to leave the next generation, especially their immediate family, the ones they care about, the ones they love. They want to leave the world better than when they got here. And what I know about innovation is that, it's a process that can be taught. And many people think they're not innovators, and many people think they're not entrepreneurs. And I would just add a word to that. They're not innovators yet. They're not entrepreneurs yet. And I believe that everyone inside of them has the capability of changing the world. And it doesn't start at the global level. I think, the message gets lost if we focus on, oh my gosh, we actually have to change the world. The way the world's going to be changed is at the local level. The problems that people face day to day, though, in the solution to those problems are businesses. And I want to teach people how to find the solutions to the problems that they face in their day. And if they have a common problem, then that means that, that could be a big business, not just a local business. And I think a lot of the reasons that we accept where we are today, both kind of personally at like a meta and financial and professional level, we just kind of accept. A lot of people I know are very content where they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But with a lot of, I think COVID has really kind of pulled back the curtains on that a little bit to show that maybe people weren't that content, and maybe that there's a little bit more that they want out of life and out of society and out of themselves and whatever it may be. But for us to do anything different, we have to change first. It starts with us individually. And I want to give everyone the capability to build a business so that as people consider what they want to do with the rest of their life, as they consider any sort of change that they want to make, that they have the opportunity to consider business. I don't think it's right for everyone. I don't think everyone wants to be an entrepreneur or wants to be an innovator. But those that do, I truly believe that we should have zero barriers between their desires and their ability to fulfill their desires, because it is those people who choose to solve the world's problems that will save the world.
So how far does HowDo go to train someone to be a leader, to be an entrepreneur? Tell us a little bit about the website and what is the vision here?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So currently HowDo is 4 sections. It's prepare, which I liken. I think building a business is similar to climbing a mountain. And if you are, a lot of people are like, oh, I'd like to climb Mount Everest. If you were to fly to Mount Everest, so like Nepal, and then trek up to base camp and then just start climbing, there's an incredible chance you die. Right? Like you actually have to prepare before you climb Mount Everest. And most people can't climb without an incredible amount of support and training. So, there's only 5% of businesses that survive. So their survival rate of people on Mount Everest is greater than the survival rate of people starting businesses or their businesses. So if we want to have a bunch of successful mountain climbers who are scaling, a 5% success rate mountain, we need to train people to train. You have to learn how to learn. It's not a process that we necessarily remember. And a lot of us has been told, hey, here's your degree, pat on the bottom, go crush it at life. And, you don't need to learn anymore because you went to school. Unfortunately, that's not a good lesson. Like the lesson that we need to learn is, if we know it today, it's called history. If we write it today, that's called the future. Otherwise, history is the same, right? So we have to write a lot of new futures. And to do that, we have to get a series of skills, some of them grit, some of them resilience, some of them just the emotional intelligence to know when we're worn out, if I think everyone hates me, I haven't slept enough. If I hate everyone, I need to eat. Like those kind of things are really basic, but when you're building a business, you lose sight of them. And so part of it's kind of the mental game. The other part of it is the actual factual game of who are the biggest players in the market right now? What are they doing? And how did they get there? Because if you choose to build a business, at a minimum, you should understand the people who are winning at business. And currently in America, at least, that's Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft. Those companies more than any have really won over the long term. I'm not saying that like Tesla and SpaceX and PayPal and Stripe and Airbnb and Uber, those are all very impressive, but the others have just been around longer. and they're more diversified and they're more stable in Wall Street and blah, blah, blah. So, learning from the mature companies, a lot of startups think that they should look at other startups. I would really suggest that they look at the big companies. So prepare is get your mind right and get a foundational set of knowledge. Then there's plan. Plan is a real, 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D process that walks you through deeply understanding your customer, deeply understanding your competition, the market, and then available technology. Once you have that information, really understand it, then you can build a plan. The third section is tools. Unfortunately, business is really simple. There's only 3 different types of tools. You can build something, you can buy something, or you can partner with something. That's how business is done at scale, right? If you're going to build something, well, you need product management. So we teach you product management. If you want to buy something, you really only have 2 options. You can buy equities, which is venture capital, corporate venture capital, or straight investing. So we give you a little crash course there, or you can M&A, mergers and acquisitions. You can buy the whole thing. We give you a crash course there. And then there is partner, which is incubator and accelerator. And those are very similar. Accelerator is generally 3 months. Incubator is kind of 6 months plus. But the purpose of both of them is to take a nascent concept or a nascent business and accelerate its growth. Find product market fit faster, find profitability faster, find whatever KPI is important to, candidly, just getting more investment, because that's the whole point of early stage companies, just getting more investment. So, the point of an incubator as an accelerator is to accelerate the investing cycles. Or, incubator, because longer term, maybe the idea is less formed. So you got to incubate the idea, then accelerate the investing cycle. But that's it. That's business. Now, the important thing throughout all of that is that you can't get anything done in this life without a team. And, to be a good leader, I think you need to build more in the team. I think you have to build a tribe. And so, I try to do my best to share what I have learned from building a tribe. And then I try to do my best to share what is the best practice of Silicon Valley. So we look at culture, we look at communities of practice, mentorship, hiring, employee experience, management, which, sometimes includes firing. And then again, how to keep your shit together through all that. Because, as I've scaled in my career, I've found that the more that I sleep well, eat right, exercise, have a healthy balance between my work and creativity, and have a healthy balance with my personal relationships, then I can do almost anything at work. If some of those variables get out of whack, especially sleep and food and water, boy, I suck at work. And I really specifically start sucking at leadership. So I think that a huge part of being successful in business is really taking care of yourself. If you don't do that, you can't be successful in anything. So that's the last section. And just to say, though, that is my interpretation of business. And by no means, I would call myself an innovation and entrepreneurial enthusiast. I've done a lot of huge projects, I launched Amazon's digital video product with a great team, or I was on that team that launched it, helped launch Amazon's first billable web service, built Amazon's India fraud office, launched Visa's PayPal competitor, launched PayPal's Visa competitor, launched several new products at Rosetta Stone, many of which won awards. Whenever I say launched, I mean, there's a huge team that was involved. I did none of that stuff by myself. I was probably the dumbest person on the team, but and they would probably attest to that. but I think the way in which I have seen myself fail has been not being able to take care of my team because I'm not taking care of myself. And when I let my team down, it's really, really hard to recover. It's really hard to get their faith back and their trust back. And I've learned from that intensely. And, I'm trying to help everyone else avoid the pieces of, I was going to say bad word, the piece of poop that I've stepped in. And then also I'm trying to create space for others who feel the same compulsion that I do. One of the reasons that I hired that investment bank in London to define the story is I want to be able to tell business people everywhere around the world, hey, look, this is the state of our world and we can do something about it. And I think that it's really important that we get people on board with this mission and we build a tribe around HowDo, a tribe of people who want to contribute to HowDo's information, want to contribute to HowDo's development in any way. I own the company. I own 100% of it. I have a completely clean cap table. I'm the only person on it. For me, it's not about ownership of this company. Candidly, it's not even about like, what percent do I retain? What's important to me is that we solve the world's problems. And so I'm trying to figure out a structure that is inclusive and equitable as possible with anyone who wants to contribute to HowDo. But I'll tell you, it's really, really hard legally. Just even having these conversations with lawyers, their heads are blown. They're like, wait, you want to give away equity? Like, I don't understand you. You have a fever. Go check in with the hospital. It's the stuff has not been done yet. Right. So, the point of HowDo is to put a flag in the ground to show people I'm very serious about this and I'm going to do whatever it takes to the extent that I can to help. And if people want to join me, I'm here, right? Like, I'm very willing to do whatever it takes to get the right people to help.
I think it's an immensely innovative, courageous idea and a plan. And I'm really hoping that this really takes off in big ways.
Thank you.
Wes, you mentioned about going through some serious downs when you were leading a company. Could you care to share one of those episodes where there were like big learnings and, enormous amounts of feelings that were invested?
The biggest emotional thing that ever happened in my life professionally was having my company closed. It was closed for reasons. I was an entrepreneur in residence at Target. And I joined and ultimately got promoted to vice president of innovation and ultimately built a Techstars accelerator. So I really had 3 jobs. I was VP of innovation, head of the Techstars accelerator, and then also running my company. But my company is what I loved. I mean, that was truly, 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 like, I had worked on it for years before Target. So I was very excited that it was going to come to life. And then ultimately, for, like I said, reasons unrelated to us, company closed. That broke me. I mean, like, that broke me in a way that I did not know that I could be broken. It put me into a tailspin where there was no bottom. Literally, I started having panic attacks where I would have seizures and my hands would seize up and my arms would seize up and I'd fall to the ground and I couldn't breathe. And a couple times I went to the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack or something. I didn't know. And they're like, no, dude, you're having a panic attack. Like, you're totally freaking out. And I've learned how to, when those things come on now, I've learned how to not have them happen. And then, that kind of triggered a whole, that initial shock of the failure and just triggered a whole lot of emotional stuff that I had never dealt with in my life. Stuff, PTSD that I had from my youth, big things that I'd never really even thought about. And so I started to go to therapy for my company and ended up in therapy for a whole lot of other things. It got to the point with me where I didn't see a reason to live. My company was, in many ways, my reason to live. And over the last couple of years, I've really recognized that, I buried myself in work because I didn't want to deal with a lot of the pain that was in my past, in my history. And so rather than deal with myself, I dealt with work. And that created a tremendous imbalance in my life. And that imbalance ultimately led me to be less successful, in my opinion, than I could have been in my career had I taken more time to actually deal with the issues in my life, haven't taken more time to, allow myself to feel emotions or to allow myself to take a break. I remember one of my friends recently reminded me that on the day of my first wedding, because it didn't last long, we got divorced, the day of my first wedding, that I spent 80% of the time in meetings and that I canceled my honeymoon on the day of my wedding so I could go back to work and fix the project. I don't even remember that. And that's probably the point, right? I was so focused on work at the time, there was nothing else in my life. And I've learned since that the way to really be successful truly is to have that balance and scale. I've learned since that therapy is a really important part of my life, at least. And, I've also learned that I have, I'm ADHD. I didn't know that. I learned that I was bipolar. I didn't know that. But all these things are completely manageable, right? I think learning that I have them is the best information anyone ever could have given me, because now I know what's going on and I can treat them. and kind of building my life and what I'm doing with HowDo, building HowDo from a foundation of, mental health, emotional health, physical health is a very different way of approaching work. Work for me was just like run like hell. And so, the getting knocked down as far as I could possibly go to where I literally saw no more value in life. And then having to work through the reasons for that and come back, but try to come back in the way that I believe the world should be. Not come back in the way, like not try to fit back in that box of like, oh yeah, I'm just going to try to please shareholders and, placate my team, but like really be like, no, man, if I'm going to be in business, I'm going to solve some world-class problems. I'm going to actually try to save the world. Like, if I fail, so what? I'll be like a remarkable lesson for the person who's successful. And for me, the decision is simply a failure is the decision to stop iterating. Right. So I don't see this as a business as much as I see this as what I'm going to do until whatever takes life away, takes it away from me. Like I'm going to iterate until I'm successful because the problems are that real. They're that tangible. They're that immediate. And I don't see anyone focusing on it in a way that I think is going to produce the results that we need as a species.
Wow. That episode must have brought so many learnings, so many insights, and probably got you back stronger, far stronger than you've ever been, West, in doing everything that came forward after that, right?
Oh, very much.
Very much, yeah. Now, I wanted to also get to know the person, the West Stringfellow that you are now, the history that have molded you. And a lot of times I came from a very difficult past myself. And just when people ask me, that past, having an abandoned parent, a parent that was absent, in a lot of ways, I'm thankful. I'm thankful because it made me who I am today. I mean, that kind of strength, that kind of resilience that one gets from those experiences. So there's no regret, there's no guilt, there's no shame, and there's no anger. So for you, West, I just want to kind of find out, like I know that you have as you say, a past that had a lot of pain and struggles. Can you share, probably right from childhood?
Some of my earliest memories are pretty violent. I'll say that. And, that had an effect on what I interpreted as acceptable behavior. And it also was deeply, deeply, traumatizing. And I think that for me, I tried to run away several times when I was a kid. I always felt like I had to hide. So I did every activity I possibly could because it meant that I never could go home. So I was a part of every sport possible. I was in Boy Scouts. I was doing anything I could to stay out of the house. And, when I'd come home, a lot of times I would just hide in my room or, whatever the hell was going to set it off that night, set it off, then, you just deal with it. But it created this environment where, no one for the last 2 years that I lived in my house, no one called me by my name. I can't even say what they called me. It was just like, bad. And they, that messes with your head. That really messed with my worldview. Number one, it made kind of language a different thing, right? When you're called the F word like 18 times a day for no reason, it kind of changes your understanding of that word. And then, like the physical violence was something that really kind of stuck with me in terms of like, I never felt safe in many places because I felt like, I didn't know what was going to kick it off whenever it went off, but when it went off, it sucked. It sucked being downrange from that. And it made me feel really unsafe. And then that made me feel really aggressive because I felt like I was constantly caged. And I studied fighting for a long time and then realized that was just feeding the fuel. But in business, I really carried that protection and that anger and that, the reaction with like a lot of F's into the office because that's just how I didn't know it, right? I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to emulate that situation. Here's my plan. But that's just like what was happening. And so, that kind of trauma, I think, had a pretty negative effect on huge parts of my life. And then there's this other experience that I think actually, one of my first jobs, I was a mountain park ranger. So we'd go way up in the mountains, carry these huge logs. Like we'd spend a week carrying logs up a mountain, and then we'd spend the next week carrying tools up a mountain, and then we'd stay on the mountain and then like build trails and stuff. And one time we were up there and a rock rolled over and squished off my thumb. Like everything from the knuckle down was torn off. And I was with a lot of the guys I was on the crew with were my Boy Scout friends, and we'd done all kinds of survival training. So I felt safe. But I had to hike 6 miles while bleeding out, and I had to tourniquet my arm. And because there's a vein that goes through my your thumb, you have to let the arm fill with blood. Then you got to cut the blood off and let arm fill with blood. Otherwise you'd lose the arm. So I remember hiking on that trail. And I remember like every single time I stood up, I felt like I was going to pass out. And then I just had to keep taking a step. And keep in mind, this is a trail that we were building, right? So it wasn't a really good trail. And I hiked 6 miles out and I got to the ambulance and then I got to the hospital. And I remember when I woke up the next day, I was like, dude, I can't believe I hiked that. Like, I cannot believe that I like walked out while bleeding to death. Like by the time I got to the hospital, I was blue from blood loss. And I think all the time when I get in front of boards, when I have to ask for large amounts of money, or I have to sell an idea that no one's ever heard of or shouldn't believe in, or like, I'm trying to explain a future that for everyone in the room doesn't yet exist, but in my heart, I know to be true. Every time I go into one of those rooms, I think about the team that got me to that room, right? I think about how much I trust them, just like I trusted the people on the trail. And I think about how my job is just to take a step. Just keep taking every step. I don't know what I have to do to be successful, but all I need to do is take one more step every time. And if I rush it, if I start running, I'll trip and fall. But if I'm careful and I just like have a really good meter, say my words the way I was trained to say them, react the way I was trained to react, and take a step, then I can get through almost any meeting and I can have really successful business outcomes. So I think those two things, one was a negative where definitely held me back and held me down. And another was like an extraordinary positive where I felt like I built the resilience to understand that, like, if you have a great team, you can pretty much survive anything.
Mm. When it comes to the person who is leading the business, and in a lot of cases, entrepreneurs, I believe a lot of people are unaware that, entrepreneur, that business person and the person, the character with the history, they're all integrated.
Yeah, well, that's
and as you show this example, of yourself, coming from where you came from, and I know you shared the story with me about you being a kid and having an absent parent, and that.
Completely gone. My mom, yeah. So like I think my mom's still alive, so I won't say too much, but I'll say this. We don't have a relationship. We haven't had a relationship for a very, 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 very long time. And I was raised by May, who was our maid, is what they called her. But to me, she was more like my mother figure. She was the one who would like tell me what to do and tell me what was good and tell me what was bad. She would like listen to me. She would actually listen to the words I was saying and like have a conversation with me. And she was such a sweet lady. She was 65. She was Black, had grown up in the South. Family was long history in the South. So her parents had been slaves, and she had lived in a time where she had to go in and out of the back door. And she told me about all these people, and I'm like, people are assholes. Like, what the hell, man? Who would do that to me? And I grew up around her grandchildren, and they're, obviously they were Black, and I didn't know that there was like a difference between Black and white people until I went to first grade. And then it became more obvious. And I remember asking my mom about it and getting an unhelpful response, and then asking May about it and getting like a really detailed response. Like, oh yeah, skin is a really big thing. And like, my color of my skin, I used to get this for that. And I used to, like, she got whipped for telling a white girl to shut up at school. Like they pulled a switch out and whipped her. And it just blew my mind. Like it blew my mind that May had gone through that, because May was so important to me. And like, she was such a sweet and caring person. And I couldn't imagine someone being that much of a jerk to her. And it really, I don't know, it's been really interesting in my career. I feel like it's changed the way that I look at people. I really like people for what they do at work, who they are as people. Like, are they high character? Can I trust them? Are they going to be good good leaders? Are they going to enable others? Do they take feedback well? Are they hungry? Do they want to grow? That's how I analyze a person. And and being in the rooms that I've been in for 23 years, all over the world, in some countries that are, I wouldn't say America's perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We have a hell of a long way to go. We are nowhere close to equity or equality. Diversity is like a joke in the C-suite. It's a joke in terms of where capital goes. It doesn't exist. So, I mean, there's a ton of work to be done here, but there are places elsewhere in the world where they're further behind even, and they're a little bit more vocal about things. And so, growing up in business the way I did, I kind of accelerated to a high level at a young age, and hearing the way people talked about people, I just didn't get it. I just thought, like, there are those jerks. There are those jerks that May talked about. I have much, much, much worse words for them. But like, there are those people that would spank May for saying shut up because her skin was different. Or there are those people that made her go in and out of the back door. And I think those people are still very much in business. I think they still lead business. And that's, again, why I'm building HowDo, because the way in which we get those people out and get a diverse group of people in is by giving everyone the tools to win at capitalism and to win at business. And currently, the businesses that are the most successful, the entrepreneurs that are the most successful, are the ones who master innovation. So if we can teach everyone how to successfully innovate, we can get those people out. And literally, I think that would go so far in changing the world.
I listen with fascination what you say, and I kind of, and you can correct me on this, please do, and tell me if I'm wrong. Where you came from, the history and what you endured and experienced, as well as absorbed as a kid, gave you so much hunger. Gave you so much compassion. I mean, compassion at enormous amount of level to do what you're doing right now and to have so much intelligence as well as awareness.
Thank you.
For any person, people can come out wrong. Like, being bitter as a kid could turn them, in many circumstances, and this is serious, in many circumstances, bitter as an adult. And then they go on to create more bitterness in their family and people around them. Yes. Now, for you, it turned out it is complete U-turn, and what you're doing is impacting greatness, impacting positivity. So tell us, for any person who is going through what you're going through even now, as a teenager or as a youth, or even come from a background that has been filled with struggles and pain, what will be your advice, Wes, to any person to have that U-turn, to know that life is not going to be bitter if what changes?
I think the thing that I would say that I would have to put myself in the mindset that I was in when I was bitter, because what I would tell myself right now is what I tell myself every time I feel like, oh my God, this is so scary and overwhelming that I just want to go back into my bedroom and maybe drink a bottle of wine and watch a Bill Murray movie. Like, like, it gets to that quite often when you're building something that no one understands for free. And so the thing for me is right now it's keep moving. That's it. Keep moving. Do not stop moving. The thing that I would say for folks who still haven't worked through whatever trauma they haven't worked through, my strongest, most powerful endorsement on therapy. Therapy changed my life. Yeah, I think it's a really hard process to get into therapy. You have to admit that you need help. Then you have to go into a room with the stranger and be vulnerable and get that help. And then you have to actually apply that help to your life. And, finding that stranger is a huge process. It took me a long time to find someone that I could trust, talk to, and then get the right information back. So, if anyone's going to go get into therapy, find the right person and take the time to find the right person is my advice. But go to therapy because the answers are in all of us. I think people start telling themselves. In fact, there's a lot of scientific evidence that suggests that when people tell themselves stories about their own limitations, they actually manifest those. Carol Dweck, who wrote a great book called Mindset. I keep it right here behind me because it is like literally one of the best books. If you are stuck in your life, read Mindset. It's all about having a growth mindset, and which means that you're open to new experiences. And that's why I say just keep moving. But if you're not there, if you have a fixed mindset, if you're stuck, therapy is a great way to get unstuck. And why, if you don't think you need therapy, just listen to this one little anecdote. In Carol Dweck's book, she has this research that she cites where they took African-American men, Black men, and they took women, both who tested above average. And they put them in a room. They did a standardized test and they all tested above average. Okay. So they test above average, period. Then they had them fill out their gender or their race. And then they had them retest. All of them tested worse. Just asking them the question, what is your gender or what is your race? Their test scores dropped. Then they put them in a room filled with white men and their test scores dropped even further. And what that says is that there is when I read that, I literally dropped the book and was like, well, this is like the most important piece of research. Everyone should know this fact. Like, that means that the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and how we identify and the permissions that we afford ourselves based on that identity are in some ways manifested by ourselves. This is a story we tell ourselves we bring true in life. And I think to be able to tell ourselves the right story in the first place requires us having a clean understanding of ourselves and our emotions and where we are in this world. And that requires really getting in touch with ourselves. And for me, that required therapy, not for everyone, but for me. And then, once you have that foundation, starting to write your own story, like literally, not based upon the trauma that you've received, not based upon clouded vision and bad judgment and fatigue or whatever, but based upon a foundation of trust and safety in yourself that you can succeed, and you're going to keep trying until you do, because you will fail. There's no way you're going to move forward without stubbing your toe. You didn't learn how to ride a bike without falling. You didn't learn how to talk without messing up. You didn't learn how to walk without falling. Almost all of us have gone through those kind of experiences. So, it's hard to remember what it's like to really, 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 truly suck at something. And that is what it's going to feel like for every new thing that you do as you build a business. So the first time you advertise on Google, you're going to be like, oh, Jesus, I suck at this. The 19th time, you're going to be like, why did I ever fear this? So but you're going to have to learn all the business tools, all the business jargon, all the blah, 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 blah. It's not that much. If you gave yourself 1.5 years of really trying, you'd master it. Anyone can master it. The only reason people don't understand it is because they're not putting their minds to it. So I would just say that, if you're stuck, the best thing you can do is therapy, get unstuck, and then look at the world and ask, what am I actually capable of doing? Not what bullshit do I tell myself, but what am I actually going to achieve? And then don't stop until you achieve it.
Totally agree. And makes a lot of sense, because as a transformation coach myself, it's a lot to do telling my clients or people what meaning you make out of the situation. What meaning did you give the event? And as a result, what positive value can you draw upon it? Now, that research or that analogy, anecdote that you took out from the book, that was powerful, because it really brings to mind how conditioning, any sort of conditioning, cultural conditioning, race conditioning, gender conditioning, parental, all that combines into your history. So literally getting out of those conditionings in the matrix, as I call it.
Yeah.
Setting your own blueprint.
Yeah.
Setting your own blueprint, right, Wes? So for you, there's healing in therapy, but there's also a sense of awareness and strength to encourage to build your own blueprint. So I just want to find out, when did that awareness set in for you, and how did you go about building that blueprint that is yours, that's uniquely yours?
I am, as I said, ADHD. And so I have a real problem focusing on things. And I never really knew that. I think it was pretty obvious to everyone. And then, as I said, I'm bipolar, and I didn't know that either. And it was obvious as well to everyone. And so for me, a lot of the conditioning that I do is around trying to minimize my narrative around those things. Right. So like there's a whole lot of weight that comes with I'm also bisexual, which, whatever. I don't really think that matters, but there's a whole lot of narrative that comes with that too, especially where I grew up in the deep South in the 1980s. So I have come to become really sensitive to the words that I tell myself in my head. And I've become really, really reactive to the way that I react, meaning that there's another great book, Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize winning economist, wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, or Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. I also keep it right there. But one of the things that I loved about that book is it talks about how our neurons, which carry electricity through our brain and trigger thoughts, over time, they become codified. There are paths of least resistance for the electricity. And so, like if you've experienced trauma, in my instance, verbal abuse or physical abuse, that carves a path quick, right? That becomes a reflex. That becomes an instinct. Just like if you put your hand on a stove, right? The next thing you do is not lick the stove, right? You go away from the stove, and next time you're around the stove, you're careful. So, it's that same protective sheathing that the brain forms so that it can start focusing on learning new things. Well, if we stay in our narrative, literally, in the things we tell ourselves too much, we let that sheathing win, and breaking that sheathing is deeply uncomfortable. It really, really is. And so I tend to try and do a lot of uncomfortable things. Like right now, I'm learning the piano, I'm learning the guitar, I'm learning how to film professionally. I'm learning how to write scripts. I'm learning how to communicate on YouTube. I'm learning all this stuff. And I'm learning how to teach what I know. I mean, I've already taught HowDo's course 7 full times to audiences that I paid to listen to it so that I can test it to make sure when I share it, it actually works. So like I've been learning for the last 4 years, and it all deeply sucks. Like I suck at all of it. I'm terrible. And like the first time I gave HowDo's course, it was awful. 7 times later, it's awesome. But the difference between that was not like a whole lot of cake and candy. It was a whole lot of, oh my God, I'm never going to be great at this. And then having to say to myself, no, dude, like you totally can do this. Just keep moving forward. What's the next problem you got to solve the next problem, right? And just focusing on solving all those little problems that get in my way. I have a wall of sticky notes, all prioritized. I basically do a scrum. Like, I was in product management, and before that I was an engineer, terrible one, but an engineer. And, you get up and you figure out what you're going to do for the day with Post-it notes, and you prioritize them and you put time around them. And so I get up every morning and I do my little scrum, and I track it in Excel to make sure that I'm getting more efficient. And then I have like really strong indicators of progress that I'm looking to hit. And I just keep moving forward, and I make myself uncomfortable learning something new several hours a day, so that I never ever, so that not learning, like watching TV now, that feels uncomfortable. Turning my brain off, that feels like, wait, I'm wasting time. I could be like creating or learning or improving my business or improving my mind or improving my body or improving myself or improving a relationship. Like it creates this different center of gravity in my brain. And rather than rotating around the axis of contentment, it rotates around the axis of evolution. I got to keep growing. And it's not just me, but I got to help other things grow. And I want to help other things grow. So it really, that conditioning of leaning into discomfort and training myself to learn how to learn has made anything other than learning seem really boring. And that started at a young age. I always loved learning. I hated doing the same thing twice. If I could change it every time, I would. And when I got into business, I kept getting in trouble because I kept changing things and I kept changing things. And they were like, you can't keep doing that. You can't keep doing that. You got to do it our way. And finally, it just literally took me getting fired or leaving jobs and searching. And I discovered Amazon. And Amazon was like, holy shit, you want to change it? Yeah, go for it. That's awesome. Oh, and you want to use data to prove your case? Oh my God, even better. You should totally do that. And then I took the lessons I got from Amazon to every company after that. And I've built my own job. There's literally not been almost every job that I've had since Amazon, I created, and so like, it got to the point with me where the only way I could truly engage in something is if it was a problem that I chose that I knew that was beefy and burly, hard to solve. And if I solved it, it would be really worth something to someone. And so like, I just started focusing on those opportunities. And then when I wanted to create my own thing, when I finally had enough time, money, experience, and confidence to go do it on my own, I just picked the biggest and burliest problem I could find and went after it, and then like, it ended up working out pretty well for, Target took the company. That's a good thing. And then bad thing, they closed it, but good thing overall that they took it. Then with HowDo, same thing. What is the biggest, most badass problem that'll take me the rest of my life to solve? And like, how am I going to do it on my own? Just like, I got to learn how to talk on a camera. I got to blah, 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 all the stuff I said. So, for me, it's just been this pattern that I saw in my own life. And as I've learned more about myself, I recognize that pattern is what drives me and makes me happy. And that the other pattern of just fitting in the box is deeply unsettling.
So growth is very much a strong human need, and you're really pushing and keep that part of your life going. You're rewiring your brain, if I have to use that word, right? You're literally rewiring your entire brain in your system. That path to excellence for an entrepreneur at your level, learning, getting really good. How do you rapidly do that? Is that a strategy that you use? I mean, do you go to a mentor? Do you hire a coach? Say, for example, YouTube. You're trying to master this because you're going to be doing a lot of talking. So what is your strategy, West, to rapidly master something?
Do it. Like, I don't mean to be flippant, but when I was at Rosetta Stone, I was the chief product officer at Rosetta Stone. My job was to come in and help the company do a lot of things. We ended up launching a lot of products, but as part of launching a lot of products, I had to hire these brilliant scientists, like truly brilliant scientists, and they were experts at pedagogy, which is like, how do you teach people? Like, what is the best way to teach people? That's what they did. And so I got to sit there and we had to design new products that would teach people. And I got to listen to how they taught people, and I would take them out to lunches and coffees and be like, good Lord, how to train a brain, like go to town on me. And they were like, it's really quite simple. Time on task. You can make it digital. You can make it a book. You can make it tribal, meaning verbal. You can make it, many different forms. But the true indicator of mastery is your ability to do it yourself, right? Once you can do it yourself, you've learned it. Sometimes that requires building strength in mental, physical, emotional, whatever. Sometimes it requires building skill, but if you really want to show someone that you know how to do something, you have to do it. And if in the first person you got to show is yourself. If you can't show yourself that you can do it, then you will fail inherently. So, like for me, I hate being on camera. When I first tried to do this, I would literally have like full on panic attacks like I had before. And, thankfully I learned how to deal with that. But to learn with the panic attack, but I couldn't deal with the fear on the camera. So to learn how to do that, I went to the second city in Chicago and I did stand-up comedy and improv lessons. I lived in Chicago and I went, they have summer sessions and I went for 8 weeks in the summer and then a couple months in the fall. And learned how to do stand-up comedy and improv. And that was the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my entire life, other than having my thumb cut off and being stabbed. But the lessons that I learned there about having to get up in front of a crowd and then the accepting tribe, like that tribe, right? Of people who were there, who were just like, yo, it's okay to fall. Everyone's going to fall. That it took me getting into that environment to find those people who made me feel safe to try it. And so you just have to get out there and do it. And now, is stand-up comedy or improv what I'm trying to achieve on YouTube? Absolutely not. But what was the problem I needed to solve? Was it being great on camera, or was it being comfortable in myself to the point where I can go into any situation and interact with other people in a dynamic setting or talk to people in a way that is engaging? And that is improv and that is stand-up. And I sat in front of the camera for months and got nowhere, absolutely nowhere. And then I started to realize that I could really talk. If I went to a coffee, I felt real comfortable. But if you put me on a stage or in front of a camera, I felt really uncomfortable. Now, the difference there is simply the setting. So I was like, all right, I got to find a setting where I'm deeply uncomfortable and have to talk to people in front of other people. And I've discovered improv and stand-up comedy just happened to be on the menu. But it changed my entire life. Like it totally makes me feel so much more comfortable interacting with people that I don't know, and also giving other people a lot of space and permission to kind of explore where they want to explore, and then trying to follow them. And that's never something I would have done in business. Who does that in business? I'm going to let you speak, and then I'm going to draft off what you say and amplify it. Most of the time it's like, no, that person's wrong, here's my opinion. And like just the general playfulness of it. I carry that with me every day now. I want my life to be surrounded by people who we sit around and brainstorm and smile and laugh and have fun. And I got that some in business, but now I want that all in business. And so I think it's again, but it was me leaning into the problem. It was me just doing it. And it took me identifying the problem and then finding a solution. And that took a long time. I'm not saying it's quick, but it's important to keep grinding at those solutions.
Now, Wes, I've heard someone, and this is someone who goes around the world giving talks and motivating and lifting people. And his words were once, he's been through a life that he has hit rock bottom, okay? And when you have hit rock bottom, when you come out of that sense of courage and that sense of, I don't give a damn.
Yeah, that is the truth.
Yeah, and literally go all out, play full out.
Yeah,
that's the spirit. Now, that's for me. It's just, I don't know, your life. It somehow resembles that to me. Like what you have been through, and now this whole courage is seriously, it's gone off the roof. And for a lot of people, and I'm not saying they should go through experiences that are tough and hard and struggles. But for what you have been through, that value of awareness, that value of I don't give a damn, I'm going full out, play all out, and I'm hungry. I'm so hungry, right, for knowledge and success and impacting. So for a lot of people who didn't have that kind of history, what would you say? I mean, from your experiences of meeting people and nourishing and leading and just creating future leaders from youth in your organizations and where you have dealt with, what is your advice?
So I'll tell you that there's this person who I love deeply, one of my very, very close friends and colleagues. And so I won't say her name, but you know who you are. And or at least you will. She came to me when I was at a company, and I won't say the company just because I'll leave her anonymous because this was personal feedback to her. She asked me to be her executive mentor, which I was very honored by and very humbled by. And I couldn't believe that anyone would want me as a mentor. And she said, you seem like the most dangerous executive in the company, and I'd like to learn from you. And I was like, what does dangerous mean? And she's like, well, everyone is scared to disagree with you because they think that you will like go to the mat. You're going to keep going until you get your point across and win. And I'm like, well, what is the point if we're not doing that? Or like, I believe in what I say because I do my homework. And she's like, right. So I went to blah, blah, blah. So we've had this wonderful, that no one had ever approached me like that. I mean, that was 15 years and 16 years in my career. No one had ever approached me like that. And just been like, hey, you seem like a moderate asshole, and that makes you somewhat effective, and I'd like to learn from you. And I was like, I mean, so I feel kind of complimented, but also, wow, I need coaching myself. And she's probably one of the most intelligent people I know, probably one of the most personally, as an individual, successful people I know. I have an incredible amount of respect and deference for her. She's been my rock for so many situations. If I need to trust someone, I trust her in business. And I really only gave her one piece of advice in the 3 months that she had me as an or 6 months actually, that she had me as an executive mentor, and it was get out of your own fucking way. Because she would come to me and say, you gave me this huge thing and I don't know how to do it. And I'm like, okay, so what do you want me for? Do you think I know how to do it? And she's like, well, you gave it to me. I'm like, no, it needs to be done. Right. Like the point is getting it done. And she's like, okay, but I'm like, look, you are an infinitely capable person so long as you give yourself permission to be infinitely capable. You can solve every problem that stands between you and the success of this project. What do you think is the first problem you got to solve? And she went with this big problem. And I was like, no, that feels like kind of a longer term problem. Like, let's do a little chart. She listed out all the activities, put a number next to them in Excel, sorted by number. There's the number one, right? Go hit that. And then she just burned that chart down. I never saw her again for the next 6 months. Right. Like I would just hand her things. I would hand her massive problems and they would dissolve. They would just go away. It was like a fire and forget missile. I knew it hit the target. And I would only ever hear from her when she really needed me to go kick someone's butt and get it out of her way. And that was my only job, was to make sure she got everything she needed to be successful. And as long as I did that to her, she was successful. And that to me is, how I have fought my way up. No, look, I've been kicked down a lot. I mean, there's a lot of times I try to stand up and people cut me off at the knees, cut me off the neck, just fucking push me out the door. Like a lot of people don't like people who have like an absolute mission. A lot of people want people who are just going to kind of like laze around and be comfortable and wait for the company to expire or the bonuses to roll in. But I can't work that way. And I would say if you are comfortable, you're getting ready to be uncomfortable because of automation, because of competition, because of globalization, because of everything that's going on in the world. Like you have to be at your A game to really kind of win in entrepreneurialism at a minimum, and to win in the companies that everyone wants to work for at a minimum. You got to bring your A game. And to do that, you have to get out of your own way. You have to be the first person to believe in yourself in the morning and the last person to believe in yourself at night. Because if you start having doubt, that doubt will drag you down. It will become the narrative and it will become the outcome. And you have to recognize that failure, as we talk about, failure is the decision to stop iterating. You have only failed when you stop trying to solve the problem. Everything that occurs before you solve the problem is called knowledge. Knowledge sucks to gain, especially if it's not written down already. If you can't read an instruction manual to figure out the answer, you're going to have to learn. And if you have to learn, it's going to suck because you're going to make mistakes. But instead of thinking of mistakes, thinking of, okay, I learned not to replicate that. I won't do that again. Here's why that didn't work. Here's what I'm going to try differently. Here's why I think it's going to work this time. Okay, that didn't work. Here's what I learned. Repeat that process until success. Once success, look around and go, oh my God, the world looks totally different because I used to be standing over there thinking it's impossible to stand here. And now I am where I am. Where can I go now? It's a really simple process, but so many people, they're trained to go ask their boss. And if their boss doesn't know, then they're stuck. Don't ask your boss, ask yourself, what can you do to solve the problems in front of you? And if your boss doesn't like that you're solving problems, your boss is an idiot. Like, I'm sorry. Like if your boss doesn't like that you are solving problems for the business, your boss is the problem. And if you do that well, your boss will not be the problem and you will be the boss.
Yes, so well said. Thank you so much, Wes, for sharing your story, for your honesty, for the transparency, and literally just giving me all this and sharing with our viewers, this nuggets of wisdom and your own blueprint. That's what I love about it. Your own blueprint. This is your story. It's so uniquely yours in your journey, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me on. This has been great.
So I'd like to thank our producer, Shasti, and to everyone out there. Our story and our message to you is be fulfilled. Live a truly purposeful life. Thanks for watching.